Hi fam, it's Dylan's mum Deborah. This is Dylan Friend.
He gives you a back rub and says, it's going well, Brian. It's special.
Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Just keep showing up and find a way.
Cam was so nervous he couldn't swallow water.
Handed him a sheet of paper with 6 names and said, Chief, we've got to cut these 6 blokes.
Wow, shut up. I've just been barbed by a stingray, mate.
I'm just yelling, you saved my life, you saved my life, you saved my life. Thank you.
I spent the last, I think it was a couple of weeks in jail. The deepest, darkest moments often bring about our biggest highs.
Blake Pavey.
G'day.
How are you, mate?
I'm well, thanks for having me.
Welcome to the pod. This is the second time.
Yeah, no, I've been upgraded from the mini apps.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
awesome.
I was just thinking, how am I going to talk about this? You got a mini last time.
I did.
But it wasn't because we were doing a mini. It was just because you were didn't really plan it. It was sort of wasn't it? And we said we'd come back and do a full episode to talk about it.
But now, I'm in the new, I was in this room. How long ago was that? That was 6 months ago now.
I reckon it would have been a year ago, man.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, maybe. I think I was just about to kick off tour or something like that.
You hadn't been on the tour yet.
No, I think it was a couple of weeks out.
So literally we sat in here, did a mini in a room that'd just been plastered, and then after that you went away and we built this. So you haven't been back since.
No, but it's good to be back.
No, it's exciting, man. I'm so happy to have you on, and our friendship's grown. I'd like to think that.
Yeah, at the start it was sort of, just a bit tedious, I was like, not sure about this bloke, but it's good.
Do you remember that time when I messaged you and I said something? I can't even remember what I said now, but it was something like a joke that you make with someone that you really know, and I thought we were there yet. And then you just weren't near your phone, and I thought that you just didn't reply to it. And then I followed up again being like, I was joking, by the way. Yeah. And then I sent 3 in a row, and you're like, oh, mate, I just wasn't near my phone.
Oh, well, that would have been 2 months ago. Was that that was tour announce day, I think when you were like, I just bought tickets because I felt bad.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, I was like, that's a good shout. And then I just put my phone down, and then you were like, oh, sorry, man, I didn't actually mean that. I was like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's anxiety, man. That's what happens. That's what happens with life. But you're well otherwise?
I'm good. Yeah. It's been, just busy, tired, but that's about it. Yeah, lots changed in the last year.
I feel like the last 12 months we said has been crazy for you. You've literally gone, and we'll debunk this today. I know you don't like the TikToker tag, but you've gone from, an online creator to realistically just transitioning into full stand-up comedy.
Yeah, it's good. I remember that's what we were talking about. That was sort of the main goal, I think, last year, which I would have hoped I'm closer to now. I've still kind of got it, which I don't hate as much. I've sort of, over the past year, I'm TikTok's the one thing that's sort of helped me get there and sort of transition into that full comedian bit. But the stand-up's been... From sort of talking to people after shows and stuff, a lot of people's first impression now is on stage and live, which is something that I really wanted to sort of get into and something that I wanted to achieve, which has been really good. But it's good to finally step that extra step up. Not that TikTok's a bad thing, but it's good to sort of, be at that spot now.
Talk us through, we were speaking about it a little bit, I suppose, last time you were in, but talk us through that whole transition from finishing school, going to creating some stuff online. Obviously you always sort of had a bit of an eye on doing comedy and doing sketches, but fast forward 1 to 2 to 3 years, did you ever think that you'd be sort of where you are now?
No, I got a lot of, I think that's the one thing, a lot of people who sort of get into it don't realise is that there is a lot of luck involved. I got very lucky to sort of, start making videos at the end of year 11. A couple of them blew up, and then sort of throughout high school, that was all of my year 12. I sort of flunked year 12 because I was like, I've got 20,000 TikTok followers. Who cares? I'm going to be, up and away in a couple of years. And and then luckily it's sort of, just progressed. And then I was supposed to be going to America with a couple of mates for a 6-month trip. And then the day before we were booking flights and all that sort of stuff, that's when Luke asked me to come on tour. So I was like, that's not really an opportunity I can pass up. So I was still not to go with them, but it's turned into probably me making a bit more money this year, which is good. But it's been crazy.
Talk us through that opportunity, because that was before, as we said last time you chat, you sort of had that in the works. You're going on tour with Luke Kidgel, who is another comedian, online comedian, who's done a great job in transitioning, as we were saying before, with both sort of online stuff to then going and doing live shows. How did that come about? How did the relationship come about? How did him asking you to come on? And what were you actually doing for him? Were you opening? How does it work?
Yeah, so basically we met through because we both did TikTok and all that sort of stuff, and then we sort of just followed each other mutually after a bit. I actually got a Snapchat memory come up, and it was like 2 years ago today, and it was me in year 12, and I was like, oh my God, Luke Kidgel just messaged me.
Wow.
So I sent that to him, and I was like, lol, now I just think you're a cockhead. But yeah, no, we met, and then he invited me to go on his podcast a couple of times, and then I'd sort of mentioned to him that I was starting to do gigs and do stand-up and all that sort of stuff, and then I was only really about 5 or 6 gigs into it, just doing open mics and all that sort of stuff. And he just said, hey, I'll come to one of your gigs. Me not realising, I was just like, oh yeah, Luke's going to come to one of the gigs. So he rocks up with like a crew of like 7 or 8 like who work for him, who are now just like my good mates now. And I was like, but still I was oblivious. I was like, nothing's going on here.
Yeah.
The boys just want to see a bit of comedy. But like it was obvious, like in hindsight, he was just like checking me out to see if I was like good at it. But yeah, and then I just did that gig. He asked me to open for him, and then 2 months later we were in Wagga or something for the first show, ready to kick off. And then his tour blew up through that, so I basically got another 6 months out of it, which was insane. So again, just like so lucky.
Talk us through that too. Like that's unbelievable. Maybe it's just because I've never thought about it like this, but a tour it just seemed so full on. Like you were on a plane like every couple of days going all around Australia. Like have you got like a list of how many places you went, how long the tour went for, how many shows did you do?
We tried to make at the start like just a map of Australia, and then we'd put like a dot or a pin in like every spot we went to, but then it just got too many.
Wow.
We would just keep going back to places, just adding all these new shows, which to Luke's credit, like he's a very hard worker. So like, it's all of his achievements, and I just sort of got to, go on the ride with him. But the travel was just crazy. That was probably my favorite thing. I just got to see the country for the first time ever. Like there was a lot of places I hadn't been before. So yeah, that was awesome.
Did you, and like now obviously doing your own tour in 2023, kicks off in March, literally dying?
Yes, very excited. That was, I think, sort of, I had the idea for the show before Luke's tour started, but I just knew I wasn't
ready to do your own thing.
No, not even close. Like that, I got like a bit of a shortcut being able to do, 10, 20 minutes a night on stage in front of these big audiences for a year straight.
Yeah.
So, that sort of got me to that point quicker. But, I'm really excited to do it. I think sort of over the last year, like that, it goes back to the, wanting to not be a TikToker and all that sort of stuff. I think this will sort of be the thing that sort of, I've put a lot of work into. It's a bit more of an art form, I guess, as much as I don't think comedy is really an art form. It's just it's just a lot more of, I put a lot more of myself into that show than I would, just a random TikTok skit. So I think hopefully it'll show a lot of people that, he's more than just the comedian or the TikToker dude. So yeah.
Yeah, and we'll talk a lot about the tour later. I've obviously got my tickets ready to go.
You were one of the first, I think.
No, I was pretty quick. I was pretty quick on it because I'm not actually a big planner. Like I hate sort of doing things in advance. Like I'm like, I don't know what I'll be doing. Like, will I be available on those dates? But like, obviously if you book them, you are going to be available. And my thing this year was, and this is just a weird thing that I wanted to be better at, was I want to go see more live like music and events, including shows. And the other thing was I want to be that guy that like purchases tickets and then like brings someone along with them. And then like, it's cool to do that because people have done that to me. Like I'm going to see Chappelle next week and a mate got tickets and he's like, do you want to come? I was like, fucking oath. So I wanted to be that guy.
Yep. No,
which
that's
is cool.
good.
Yeah. And obviously support the show.
Yes.
We'll talk more about that later and how people can go view it and see it and where we can go. What was the one thing though, like I'm interested in obviously the comedy side of things, but like the business side of it. What was the one thing you learned on going like, fuck, I didn't think this was involved in a tour that was like harder to manage than anything else that maybe you learned from Luke's, then you're like, thank fuck I knew that when I was doing my own tour? Yeah,
well, that's like I'm booking my tour through me and Luke both have our shows booked through Luke's brother Jack.
Yep.
And they've sort of started a business from there that I've sort of just like put myself into now, which is good. So they do a lot of the admin, but I went into the office one day just to work on all of my stuff that's coming up, and then it's just like a lot of paperwork and a lot of just like especially stuff with like liability issues, insurance, and all that for the venue. It's
all the
a
fun stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of back and forth that I didn't realize was involved. So I was like, God, because that's what I was going to do. Like initially, like, you know, had Luke's tour not blown up to the point that it did. Like I was just probably going to book my own.
Yeah.
So glad that didn't happen, because I'd have like maybe 2 shows and I'd be like, that's enough. I don't want to do the paperwork. But yeah, no, the paperwork and the admin is just, it's insane.
Talk us through comedy in general. Growing up, who were some of your idols? Who do you get like a lot of inspiration from? Who do you like? Who do you not so much like? What are your favourite things in comedy?
Well, I think a lot of my, probably initially why I got into sketch and characters and all that sort of stuff initially was like just more comedy actors. Like Jim Carrey and Robin Williams were my favourite sort of actors back in the day. And like I think the first time I like realised that, you know, there's something behind like my favourite movies as a kid was like my favourite movie was The Mask, like as a kid when I was like 4. But the movie that would give me nightmares was The Grinch. And then when I was like 8 or something like that, I was like, oh, that's the same dude. And then that's when it sort of clicked for the first time that, oh, like this dude's like, you know, he's amazing and he's doing all this sort of stuff. So that's when it sort of first clicked for me that like, you know, you could do all this stuff. But then in terms of stand-up, you know, I'd had the pretty, you know, basic setup. Like we grew up in the country. So I think the first special I watched was like Carl Barron, One-Ended Stick and stuff like that. And then as I sort of got into it more and started doing gigs more, I just, you know, obviously the American ones, like Mark Maron's a big inspiration, which I'm really excited for his special to come out in a couple of weeks. He's just this sort of like older dude, sort of just like he talks about a lot of morbid stuff as well, just sort of more existential stuff. And yeah, so probably Mark Maron's my sort of, he's on my Rushmore of comedians. But yeah, no, I sort of take where I can get anything really. Tig Notaro did a special about like a cancer diagnosis she got. And obviously that's a big inspiration in terms of that. But yeah, I really just take what I can get really. Yeah. But in terms of comedians I hate, Kidgel, fuck that guy. There's not a lot of comedians I hate. I just, you know, there's just some that aren't
different taste.
Yeah, but I still respect it. Like
definitely.
If someone can get up on stage, I'm like, oh, okay. You know, they're giving it a go.
100%. There's, I don't know if I remember this right or not, but I remember talking about like every fucking idiot that thinks they know something about comedy like myself. Like I love watching Ricky Gervais, but do you like his comedy or you just get sick of him doing the same sort of stuff?
Yeah, I like it. I think he's like one of the best writers like ever, and like that's why he's sort of been able to keep at it for so long. But I don't like him. I don't like his fans.
Right.
I think there's a big thing in comedy now with dudes like Gervais and Chappelle and all these dudes that I love and all these dudes that I admire and have watched growing up. They've fallen into this thing where I think they sort of talk about this big thing of like, oh yeah, like I'm not going to get cancelled. Nobody can cancel me. I'm like, dude, like it's just like cancel culture has become just a marketing tactic for these older comedians who's like dumb fans will just latch onto that and think, nah, I'm going to support him because they won't get cancelled. But it's just it's like a zeitgeisty thing, like the Golden Globe stuff he does, like he did a couple of times. That's amazing.
I've watched
that's
that
awesome.
like I reckon 10 to 15 times. It is unbelievable.
It's awesome. It's like always like every time I go home, I reckon like I see my dad watching it just like through Facebook Reels and stuff like that. I'm like, God damn, he's back on it again. But like it's great. But yeah, it's just his fans that are like the most insufferable people on the planet.
That makes sense. Yeah. They're just on that one. The funniest, well, not the funniest part, but like the best part of that for me is when he's talking about Epstein and he's like, he's your fucking friends.
Yeah.
Like, he's just absolutely ruins
so
everyone.
good.
And then he says at the end, I loved it when he goes, if you win an award, just get up here, don't thank anyone, just thank your manager and fuck off.
Yeah. I think that's the best one, like just criticising like these celebrities.
Yeah, he goes, you're in no right to lecture the public on anything. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
I've watched it a couple of times. I enjoy it. Hey, just on your character stuff, that's where where I literally found you the most on when I was watching a heap of TikTok. I've had to sort of get off it now. It's actually, I think it's like consuming my brain, how much it's there. Oh, that was the thing I was going to talk to you about. I saw a podcast the other day about TikTok that was saying that, and this could be completely wrong, but was saying that China invented TikTok.
Yeah.
And if you go to like the Western world's algorithm, we're just getting fed like, twerking, like the stupidest videos, like just recycling and become
I don't get recommended twerking that much. I think that might just be
Is that me? Is it? Yeah, okay. Just love twerking. Recommended all these videos. And then you go to China, and I haven't been there or looked at their algorithm, but apparently it's a lot of like educational, like robot, like it's actually teaching their youth like unbelievable stuff.
I heard that as well.
Is that like, that's
I'm not sure if that's true, but I did hear that.
Yeah.
So probably. I mean, I guess so. That's the weird thing. Like I went home for Christmas and my dad, like he gets TikTok just so he can watch my stuff.
Yeah.
Like he follows one person, it's me. But then he comes home one day and he was like, I walk into the door one day and he was like, why's my For You page just full of like bikini models and porn stars and all this sort of stuff? I was like, I don't know, man. That's
Dad, you've gone down a rabbit hole and it's read it pretty
And then I went through his likes that are definitely on public and I was like, there's a pattern here, Paulie. I like it.
Paul.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Paul, be good. Your comedy is great. I love it. It's very self-deprecating, very funny. There's two parts. Well, I don't know. This is my opinion. There's probably two parts to your stuff that I love the most. One is the characters.
Yep.
So you've got, you play the dad.
Yep.
Bob Irwin.
Yep.
Tiff.
Yeah.
Tiff. What else and how? Like, are they inspired by people? Are they inspired by members, like groups?
Yeah.
Like, where do they come from? Which one's your favourite? And which one's probably had the most success for you?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I need to start getting back into the characters. It's sort of, I've been so caught up with stand-up that I haven't really been able to delve into it lately. But
that was the early stuff.
Yeah, but I'm keen to sort of get back into it now that I'm stronger at writing and stuff. I feel like I could sort of amp it up a bit. But the dad character came from like obviously just my dad, but it's like a lot of his mannerisms mixed in with the stuff my mum says. So it's sort of an amalgamation of those two. And then the Tiff and Jess, like the girly characters, they just came from girls I went to high school with, but just sort of dialed up to 11. And then Bob Irwin, that was just sort of, I had nothing to post. Like,
Poor Bob Irwin.
Oh, I know.
Have you ever had a reach out from him?
No, but he's definitely seen one.
Okay.
I got a message from this woman and she was like, my daughter used to go to school with him and is like good mates with him, so she shows him them. And I was like, don't. Like that, because there's definitely not the best. Like, I just think people think that, obviously it's a very, it's a bit, taboo to, make fun of the Irwins. But I just think it's so funny, the idea of putting this really nice, genuine human who's just
like the opposite of what you'd think he'd be like.
Yeah, just this like warm, just sort of presence in the community, just going to a brothel or something like that. I just think that's so funny. But people are like, how do you make fun of the Irwins? I'm like, it's not. It's just like, it's just a good contrast in comedically.
How do you deal with that in comedy? I suppose you wouldn't get into it if you weren't equipped to deal with it or had thick skin, but like the backlash and the fucking keyboard warriors and people that like, there was a video you did recently, a while ago that we were talking about, was it to do with Anzac Day or something that?
Yeah.
And just went, it just creates so much controversy. Is it something that like, does it affect you at all or
not really?
Do you see through it?
Yeah, I just sort of think I always make a point of, justifying the jokes to myself and knowing, I've been doing comedy for, 2 or 3 years now, just like at a pretty, to a lot of people. So I feel like when I make a joke, I know that it's justified. I know there's no malice behind it. And I know the joke is like that's what a lot of people about that Anzac Day video didn't really understand. They were like, it was a lot of just like blokes and like old men in the comments just being like, you're making fun of the Anzacs. I'm like, no, the video's not about Anzacs. The video's about kids and their inability to stay focused in a serious situation. And like growing up, that's what happened every year. Like, you'd laugh, one kid would pass out or vomit in the front row because they didn't wriggle their toes like the teacher said. That's what it was about. But yeah, people just, that's the thing with TikTok. People are just the worst in the comments. But you learn to deal with it, and it's, again, it just goes back to, I know the joke's justified.
Yeah. I'd struggle with that. I think I think I care too much what people think. I'm trying to get better at that.
Yeah, I don't. If it's like that, if people are getting arky about a joke, I'm like, no, I know what's good and what's not. I know, like,
you back yourself.
Yeah,
to
I'm
it,
like, yeah. But if someone's like, oh, your teeth are, I'm like, oh God. I'll be in the mirror that night. I'll be like, oh God, maybe Damo from like Bustleton, WA was right.
Man, the TikTok thing, like, it is crazy because you do just get, like, you go through comment threads and you're just like, fucking hell, how do people come up with this shit? Like,
Yeah.
it's actually incredible. And the biggest scare for me is to be made, I think, into like a worldwide meme.
Yeah.
Because you have no control over this.
No way.
Because like even just saying you have no control over this, that could become like an audio that then everyone uses for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I love, but it's also, I would be really scared of that. But when it does happen to someone else, I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I love going through those videos and you watch the video and then you just see there's like 16,000 comments and you know exactly what they're going to be.
Yeah.
I just like everyone. It's great. I fall into that as well.
The other one that's unbelievable is when you go through them and you might get addicted to some audio and you see everyone not using it and then you find out where that audio is actually from. And it's like from a movie like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's fucking weird. Anyway, a lot of your comedy is about dealing with cystic fibrosis. Are you able to go through today, talk to us about that and what it is and how did you know you had this? Like, how do you play in the education piece around living with that? Yeah,
so basically for anybody that doesn't know, it's like cystic fibrosis is like a terminal sort of respiratory like genetic illness, and basically the main thing that happens with that is like everybody's like mucus is like very sort of watery, sort of like easy to get out and all that sort of stuff. But like people with CF, it's very like sticky and thick and it's hard to move. So that gets trapped in our airways, which obviously makes it pretty hard to breathe, but that can also cause infections and all that sort of stuff. So it's like degenerative. It gets worse over time. But yeah, and then I found out, well, I didn't find out. It was sort of more my parents that found out. I was diagnosed at about 6 weeks old. So yeah, for the first sort of month and a bit of my life, I was not good, like at all. Like I think it was getting pretty serious by the end before they found out. So luckily they did, and then they put me onto treatment and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's just been my life for all my life, so it's never really felt out of place for me. But yeah, in terms of putting it in comedy, it was never really a conscious choice, really, especially doing it in stand-up. I would just try to write bits and that's sort of just what organically sort of came out and, you know, what I put onto paper. But yeah, like joking about it has sort of been sort of the thing that's probably gotten me through it, I think. Like there's no cure for like CF yet, you know, hopefully fingers crossed. But, you know, humour's been the closest thing to that, I think. So yeah, that's just basically, and that's like, you know, credit to my family. They've been able to joke about it from a very young age. So I've never really felt like a level of discomfort with it. I've always sort of felt that like I'm pretty open about it. I'm, you know, always let my mates joke about it. It was a ripping time in COD lobbies, you know, when I was 14 or 15 for my mates to be able to rip into me about that. But yeah, it's just been the thing and it's normal. Yeah.
Was there, answering the question probably there, was there a time before you started doing stand-up and bringing it as a part of your gig and humanising it, I suppose, and making it, disarming it, the power of it, was there a time when you weren't as comfortable talking about it, or has it always just been the case?
Maybe like when I was like, maybe like the very first time, like my brother tried to make a joke about it when I was like 5 or 6 or something like that. But not for long at all. Like I've always sort of been pretty open with it and sort of able to joke about it. Which like is all credit to like mum and dad who have always been pretty loosey-goosey with their humour and sometimes a bit over the top and sort of, like they're from the country. They're pretty happy to joke about anything, which has really helped throughout my life. But and then once I started doing stand-up, that's when I really just sort of amped it up a little bit and sort of, you know, latched onto that sort of card, I guess. But like that's the thing. I think people are a lot more, when I do get a general feeling from the audience when I first start talking about it that they're a little bit sort of like antsy about it. But once I start getting into it, they really just calm down. And then after shows, they're a lot more open to it. So it's a weird way of just sort of spreading awareness, I guess, which was never really my goal. I just wanted to make jokes. But yeah, it's had a really weird sort of ripple effect especially within like the CF community and other people with other health issues. It's really sort of, latched onto them and connected with them.
Yeah, well, I know from what you're saying over there, I know that you're not doing it to inspire the people, but obviously it's having that effect on people as it is. Like, have you had many people, reach out or anything like that happen from?
Yeah, well, there's just like a lot of people with, just like a lot of like illnesses that do come to the show now. Like a lot of them being CF, cancer, Huntington's, whatever you want to sort of name it. I've got a very unsustainable audience, I think. I probably should just start doing shows in ICU wards, I think. It's not good, but so yeah, I'm gonna have no audience when I'm like 35. So it's gonna be a short-lived career, but God, it's gonna be a good one at that, I think.
One of the parts of your show, which is, as I said, I can imagine, like in that art form, as we said before, it's not about just comedy. It's making people feel emotions, uncomfortable, comfort, like those bits where you go, oh, like that's, you're squirming at certain things. A big part of that of your show, which I haven't seen live yet, which I'm looking forward to, and I don't know if this is in the tour, but you sort of talk to the audience about, you always say, and I won't steal your words, is there any other dying cunts in the room?
Yep.
Now, talk us through where that came from, what sort of reactions you've got from, and what has that led to anything? Because I can imagine as a comedian, only imagine, there's only so much you can plan, right? You put together your show, but then there's so much left to the vulnerable. Like, what the fuck's going to happen? Like, what do you expect's going to happen, and where's it going?
Yep. Well, I try to like have as much control as possible, but then when you put something out to the audience, it's all like all hell could break loose. And 9 times out of 10, it's just like a really shit answer that you're just like, I can't use. It's for TikTok clips, like primarily. Yeah. But yeah, like 9 times out of 10, it's not that good. But then you get the one that's like, oh, this is gold. Like we did have one the other day. I don't think I'll use that any other dying people in the room thing like during the tour that much. I just think I've used that. Like that's out of my system, I think. But I asked people if they've had a Make-A-Wish before. Like that's a good one I get. We had this dude the other day in 2006 or something. He was like 5 years old and he asked to meet Steve Irwin for his Make-A-Wish. And within the process of setting that up, Steve died. So couldn't meet him, which, no pun intended, would have stung a bit finding out. But, it's stuff like that which really just like, I could feel the crowd just go, oh, this is good. Because I do like 10 minutes about the Irwins at the start of the show anyway. So it was like such a good way to sort of, circle the show in and sort of end it on a bit of a loop. But yeah, stuff like that. Yeah. It's really weird. And then it's just like random, like when I did ask if there's any other dying people in the room, there'd be like the 18-year-old girl like in year 12 just going, I want to die every day. And I'm just like, I fucking hate my generation, man. Yeah, it sucks. Just like TikTok people.
Oh, I seriously saw someone on Twitter today did the best tweet ever. It's mistaken who it was. I'll have to fill it in. But it said like everyone's arguing what is the worst generation in the world. It's like we all fucking suck.
Yep.
And I was like, that's actually something we can all agree on.
Yeah, 100%.
Like we all have our downfalls, that's for sure. There's things that we could take and leave from everyone. But yeah, that's it. Weirdest encounters after shows, like people that go to comedy shows, you do like a lot of meet and greets.
Yeah.
How do they go? Do you enjoy them?
I like them. Yeah, they're pretty. It's good to be able to talk to people after shows and just sort of thank them for coming. But there have been some weird ones. I do this. Not to spoil the bit, but I do this bit where you'll have to come to the show to see it because I really don't want to spoil it. But the bit is about. I love a feminine back. Like I think a back is like the most underappreciated feature on a woman's physique.
Okay, I've never thought about it like that.
So after shows, like people send me pictures of their backs, and so like a lot of them are just like blokes like in the mirror just being like, "Oh, g'day, mate," just like taking the piss, which is awesome. But there are a few that are just like, "Hey," and then have like asked me to come out after shows, and I'm like, "Oh, it was a bit." It's just like. It's a joke, but that's probably the most frequent one I get, which is really weird. But then we were in Tamworth, the country music capital of Australia, and then we finished the show, and I was standing next to Luke. We were just sort of shaking people's hands, and you try to talk to everybody just like But you also have to move it pretty quickly. So you do get into a like sort of an autopilot mode of, hey, thanks so much for coming. You still appreciate everybody, but you have to sort of move
There's a lot
on
of
quick.
there. Shake some hands.
Yeah, and we had this lady, lovely lady, but she was about 45, I want to say, and she was with her mate, and they were country folk, and picture that however you like it. But she comes up to me and she was like, "Oh, my friend was telling me that I'm not allowed to take you home tonight." And I looked at Luke and I thought she was doing a bit, but she was fully serious. And I was like, "Oh, lucky me, I guess." And then she asked me to come to like the Tamworth Tavern or whatever it was called. And I was like, I'm okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah, those are the weird ones. Yeah, it's really weird. It's a lot of like, before touring and before like doing all this stuff on stage, I wasn't the biggest ladies man ever, but like people try to shoot their shot a lot after shows, and I'm not sure what it is.
That's
like,
unbelievable.
Yeah, like I just took
A nice confident man on stage though.
I don't know if it might be the thing, just like making people laugh, but like, yeah. And maybe it's because Luke says he has a girlfriend in the show, so they're like, I'll go to the opener.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's insane. There are a lot of weird people like that. But on the whole, people are pretty nice.
Yeah. Who's touring with you? Have you got anyone coming with you on your show?
Not a regular opener, just because the tour's a bit smaller, so I don't, we're not sure if we can pay someone the full salary for the year, but I'll have people pop up in, each sort of state. Like, it'll be harder for regional shows, I guess, like just asking people to come out just for a couple of hours drive to just do like 10 minutes a night. But yeah, I've got some names lined up for like Sydney and Brisbane and all that sort of stuff, which should be good. That's the fun, like probably the hardest thing. Like a good opener is like they have to be a good comic, but like a lot of it is just like being a good hang and creating like a good vibe before the show. But yeah, it should be good. I've got good names lined up, I think. So yeah.
When you go into like actually doing this is probably maybe a debunker of what like comedy is. Like, how does it work? I know there was a really interesting video you put up like explaining about comedians doing an act. It's like basically you're acting, like you're being a performer, and you're not doing the same thing every night, but it does follow a similar process of the shows how they are. Of course, you're going to hear, if you go to 3 shows in a row, you're going to hear similar things. How does that work, and what's like the debunk theory around that? Because I think the general public, some people don't realise that. Yeah,
a lot of people. We've had people. We did a lot of times where we would do like a show, and then 2 weeks later we'd add another one and come back. We were in Wollongong, and then we came there the first time, couple of great shows. It was awesome. And then we came back a couple of weeks later, and a girl came up after the show like so pissed off at us. She was like, it was the exact same show. I was like, did you think you were getting like a different hour? She was like, yeah, don't you guys just make it up on the spot? We're like, no. And then like I try to be like pretty nice, but like Luke was just like, that's fucking dumb, like to her face. And I was like, this is awesome. Like tell it to her. I was like, this is great. But yeah, I mean, I guess it follows a certain structure. Like I have my set list, but like at the same time I do, I think a lot of it's like, if I've lost them on a bit here, I can maybe, move this bit up to here, switch up the order a bit to try get them back. But mainly it just sort of follows like, my structure of like what bits I want to do in this order. And then I'll maybe like try to go into a bit of crowd work, come out of that, go into something else. But yeah, that's probably the interesting thing. Like I've done like 20 minutes a night for the past year. So it'll be interesting to see what full hours are like. So that's probably my next challenge that I've got to get into. But, I've done a couple of trial shows over the past couple of weeks, which has been like 45, 50 minutes.
Were you doing them, or is that just...
they've just been like, we did one...
You sort of don't tell people, you just go and do them, like to practice?
Kind of. Well, we sort of done them now. Like I did one in Canberra the other week just for like one of the unis there, just to do it, just to like see what bits worked. And then the next night in Melbourne, just in like a comedy room that I was headlining. But like trial show, if I put any more on, I'll be sure to tell everybody about it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the hour sort of progresses. Like I've got it pretty tight, but it'll be interesting to see what it's like in another 6 months.
Yeah, love that. So interesting. Hey, I don't know if this relates at all. I was chatting with Becky Lucas once. There was a part where we were talking a lot about like performers and like you go on stage, it's like this massive sort of it's a massive like show. You're amped up, and then the lights go down, and you can sometimes like face a bit of a come down after like shows and tours.
Yep.
And they're talking about like how you have to be on top of yourself and your mental health, and be really productive with fitness and all these types of things. Like, have you found that? Is that something that relates to you at all? Like, how do you sort of look after yourself during tours and shows?
A little bit. God, like last year's tour where because like, I think the opening spot is like the easiest job for the tour. You just sort of rock up, you can do your 20 minutes, and then you just, you sink piss out the back for, however long Luke's on stage for. So I got it pretty good. But that'll be another thing that we have talked about. Now that a lot of the responsibilities now on my shoulders for the tour, I was like, maybe I shouldn't probably go out after every show and have 10 beers and then do all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think it's I think the one thing that challenged me the most that I didn't really expect was the travel and how exhausting it is. Because it just like, for a couple of weeks it's good, but like we did like 6 weeks just traveling, driving up and down the coast of Queensland, which just like it wrecked us at the end of that. Like I remember this is where I feel so bad for Tyler, one of the dudes that works like on the crew. We had a show in Rockhampton, like north of Queensland, and then the next night our show was in the Gold Coast, so like a 9.5 hour drive. And then we finished the show in Rockhampton, so we get home at about 1 a.m, just like after packing down and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, oh, well, I'll see you in 3.5 hours when we have to wake up and do this drive. And then we drove the 9.5 hours to the Gold Coast, and then Tyler had to go on another bus for like 3 hours to go to Splendour in the Mud. And then he just proceeded to have the worst 4 days of his life. So yeah, it absolutely wrecked him. But like, just the travel has been insane.
And it's mostly driving?
Most of it's driving. Yeah, we sort of like for WA and stuff like that, we'd fly there, but then we'd just get a car, like a rental van or something, and just drive wherever we needed to go. But yeah, a lot of it is just driving, like just, which takes it out of you as well. Like just sitting down in a car is like very tiring after doing it for 6 months straight.
I can imagine.
But yeah, I do need to look after myself more after this tour kicks off.
So you don't, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Looking after yourself is important.
Yes.
You got to drink water.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've not been doing all that.
Changing pace, you're a bit of a nuffy, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you're proud nuffy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's a bit weird. Like you really like the pies.
I do really like the pies. One of my favourite moments of last year was when you boys were up like 25 points at the third quarter, and you texted me at the game. You were like, "How do you like that, bitch?" And I just looked at it and I was like, "Nah, I'm not going to reply."
Again, because you hate replying to me.
I do.
You really don't like replying.
I was like, I'm not going to reply. I'll just see how the fourth quarter goes. Fourth quarter went well.
That was fucked. I do remember that. That was, for those out there who aren't following the footy, that was the infamous round 22 game.
Yeah.
Carlton Collingwood.
That was the best atmosphere I've ever...
You were at the game, weren't you, too?
Yeah. I was sitting in like the forward pocket that Elliot kicked the goal in, and I was like, this is just like... Because me and my dad have talked about that. We were like, if we could do anything, it'd be like a really important game, like beat Carlton by like a point.
Yeah.
And then I just rang him after the show. I was like, God damn it, after the game. And I was like, God, this is the best.
Yeah, it was pretty hectic. Look, I have said this, I don't know if I've said it on the podcast before, but I think for Carlton, it's probably the best thing that could happen to them. Like, not making the finals rather than like making it and getting knocked out in the first week, it leaves that little bit of a bitter taste in the mouth ready for next year. But you guys are going to be cool, man. Like, we have a few big episodes coming up with some Pies players.
Oh, I like
Braden
it.
Maynard coming up.
Yeah.
Who's some of your faves? Who do you
I
love?
love Maynard. He's just so like...
He's the toughest, mate.
Yeah.
He's just like... Oh.
When he laid that tackle against... I can't remember who it was. When the dude from Melbourne...
Ed Langdon.
Yeah, and he tackled him, and I was like,
You felt that, didn't you?
I was like, that's the best. But then, but yeah, I just love. He's just a good, tough player. But yeah, love all the boys. Obviously,
love all the boys.
They're all great.
You wouldn't DM any after a loss or a win, would you?
No,
not abusing them or anything.
No, that's the one thing. I haven't had too much contact with any Pies boys. Really?
Hope to change that this year.
I do hope to change that this year. Yeah, maybe I should stop working with fucking Richmond and then maybe that might change.
Talk us through that. You got cast as a gig on their membership. What was that? Like,
it was like their
work?
membership campaign, and it was like it would have been just over a year ago that I like did that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'd had COVID. I hadn't started doing shows or anything like that. I was like, money was a bit tight, so I was just like,
let's get on the billboard.
Yeah, I was like, this sucks. But then it was so funny. Grand final day, I woke up and then I met like my business manager, Jack. He was at like a pub in Richmond. So, and then we had a house party to go to. So like what that meant was like we did like the MCG walk with like all the supporters, like past the Richmond training ground and all that sort of stuff. So we're walking past like the Swinburne Centre or whatever it's called that Richmond trains at. And then I'm walking past and I just see like on the wall is just like my face, like just on the Richmond thing. I was like, this fucking sucks. like God, like I'm so sorry. I remember Collingwood like messaged me on Instagram. They were like, you've got a lot of making up to do. And I was like, I know, I would do anything for you.
Is that one of those situations where you like, I've definitely been in this situation. You do something and as you're doing it, you'd sort of immediately regret it and you realise the scale that this is. Like, did you know how big that campaign was going to be, or they didn't probably share the...
No, I had a general sense of like, it would have been dumb of me to think like, oh,
like this was on like, for those out there that haven't seen it, I'm sure you have, but it was a massive like QMS like fucking billboard in Richmond, and it was also like on the membership, like newsletters and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, and then like every Richmond home game at the G, the ad would play on the screen. So like every Richmond home game, someone just would like send me a video of them like in the audience. And then like me and my mate had been planning to go to Collingwood Richmond like at the G, and then like 2 weeks before he was like, do you still want to go? I was like, no. I was like, I'm not rocking up in a Collingwood jersey and then have my face in a Richmond jersey plastered up on the MCG. It's insane.
Oh, fuck me.
But no. But I do like, I should hate Carlton as a Collingwood fan, but I would like to see them do well.
That's nice.
Because I do like to see like teams that have been like historically not in the best place sort of win. That's why it was so good watching Melbourne win.
Well,
like
even
Richmond
this
back
year
in the
watching
day.
like I was rapt watching Collingwood win and play good footy this year. Like you look at those young guys coming through like Ginnivan, and I really like Trent Bianco.
Yep.
I can't even think who else there is now. Tyler Brown.
Yep.
He's at Adelaide now, isn't he?
Oh, Callum.
Cal Brown.
Yeah.
He gave me a big corky in the bicep once.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Anyway, but they're looking good, so I'm excited for the Pies this year. I think they'll be pretty strong actually.
So I'm like, yeah, should be good. That's the worst thing about touring is I can't go to the footy as much.
Did you ever play
footy?
Yeah.
I played like under 16s. And then I just remember, like, you know, I'm not the biggest
Was it
bloke.
like a nifty forward pocket type situation?
I was nifty sort of like centre-half bench most games, sort of, you know, half-forward water boy, just all that sort of stuff. But like, you know, I just sort of did it to just play with mates.
Yeah, who was that with?
Cora Rutherglen.
Yeah.
The Kangaroos. What a squad. Yeah, we made the under-16s grand final. Had a great game in all 0 minutes that I played. It was, but I just remember I was like, the time I thought footy is maybe not for me is when I think like 2 of our like ruck rovers like were injured, and then the backup for them got injured, so they just looked at me and they were like, okay, go in. And like I'm the type of dude that like I will put no effort into training or anything like that. But like when I get the game, like when I get game time, I'm like, well, this is it. This is my Rudy moment. This is like my sports movie. It's like I'm going to come out and have 50 touches. Never happened, but I go into the ruck, and we were playing like I think we were playing the Wodonga Bulldogs or something like that, and the two, like their ruckman and their ruck rover were like 2 like just fucking huge like Samoan type dudes, and they were both like double my weight, double my size, and then the ball gets tapped down. I was like, I'm just going to stay away, but then the ball just like, you know, 1,000,000 to 1 just like bounced in my hand. And I just remember looking at the ball. I was like, oh, this isn't going to be good, because I just see this dude running from this side and another from this side, and they both just just absolutely slammed me. And I remember being like on the ground in between these two dudes. And then I just remember one of my best mates, Bailey, he was just looking at me. He was like, I thought you fucking died, man. Like I could hear like the crowd just go, oh. They were like, we've killed a man on the footy field. It was not good. So after that game, I was like, okay, maybe just cock jokes on stage for the rest of my life.
Oh,
it's not good.
Unbelievable. What's like the plans what's your goals? So after the tour, have you sort of banked out anything you want to achieve? Like, what's the ultimate for you? Is it just selling out? Would you love to do a world tour? Would you love to have a special? Like, what's like the next sort of thing?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about it too heavily. I think just, I'm very focused on like short-term goals and just doing that the best I can, because then I think that like longevity wise will lead to other great stuff. But, I'd love to do a special one day. I'd love to, tour other countries. I'd want to do the UK at some point, like the US if I ever got the chance. Just all that sort of stuff, just like to tick it off the bucket list. But yeah, I think just stand-up's going to be the thing. I think I love it. It's just what I love to do. I'll have fun up there on stage every night. But yeah, I'll probably just, finish this tour, start writing the next one, and probably that'll be life, hopefully. But and then I'd love to do acting stuff as well. I'd love to get into all that sort of stuff.
Like actual TV shows or like skits or
I'd do anything. I mean, I love doing skits and characters and all that sort of stuff. I'd love to write stuff like maybe for TV and film and all that sort of stuff. But
what does that mean? Like, what does writing mean?
Just
writing shows. Like,
if I could write like a show or like a movie or something like that, that'd be awesome. But like, I think that's going to be later on down the line. I think I'm just going to put a lot of my effort into stand up and getting good at that over the next couple of years, and then maybe hopefully doing some acting stuff on the side, which should be good. But I'll just take it by a year and just see how it goes. It's
late, man. I love it. Hey, shout us out. How can we get tickets to the show if we haven't already, and where's sort of available for everyone?
Yes, so you can get your tickets at blakepavey.com. Just we've got all the dates on there, which should be good. We've added a couple of shows, like second show in Terrelgan, Brizzy, whereas Sydney we've added a second show. And then Perth and Adelaide both have added third shows, which has been awesome. So thanks to everybody who has bought tickets. So if you've missed out on them, everything's at blakepavey.com. And then updates on shows will be, via my socials, Blake Pavey on Instagram, all that sort of stuff. So get your tickets.
I'm going on April.
I think you're going closing night.
Closing night. That's what I was sort of wondering. I was like, I thought you'd give the most on the closing night of Melbourne.
Yeah.
But then I was also like, maybe you'll be the most tired.
Mate, who knows? Yeah. I don't know. I think I've got my cousin's 21st right after that. So I think I'll be
We'll be up and about.
I'll be up and about,
okay, good.
That's the thing. I think a lot of people got tickets to the first night. And they're like, first night, it's going to be the best night. I was like, no, get tickets to the second night.
Yeah.
Like the second show's like, I'm not on that high of like, first show. Like the second show, that's the sweet spot.
Okay. Well, cancel mine. Those ones. Awesome, man. We can't appreciate enough for coming in today, telling your story, and we'd love to just have you on more often.
Yeah, sounds good.
Stop by.
No worries. I'm okay.
How funny is it when do you ever get that when people think you're a comedian, tell me a joke? Like, is that a thing?
All the time.
Yeah. Yep. Do you have a one-liner for that yet?
No, I make it as awkward for them as possible.
Yeah.
I love making them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's really bad. I only have like stuff set up when people recognize you but don't recognize you. They're like
the old, like, they know who you are but they fake that they don't. That's my most hated thing ever.
Yeah, they like I went to BTV like a couple of weeks ago, so it's just like a lot of where do I know you? So I just say Crime Stoppers, and then I can just walk away.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my only line I have.
There you go. If you hear that, he wants absolutely nothing to do with you.
Yep.
Thanks, brother. We'll chat soon.
Thanks for having me.
Exciting.
Cheers.